Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
January 17, 2020, the What's Your Plan edition. First up, China has renewed, and this is from the New York Times, China has renewed its Belt and Road push for global sway. Deals by Chinese companies to build ports, telecom networks, and other infrastructure projects in poor countries has picked up, alarming some in the West, as well you should be. But for the compliance practitioner, with this program coming roaring back, it's going to put additional pressure on you around the bribery and corruption brought by the Belts and Roads push. So are you going to be ready for this? Do you recognize this as a competitive problem? How are you going to deal with it? And certainly the U.S. government is going to be looking very closely into this. Next up, in a fairly stunning interview, which I actually have seen the clip on, a Mets front office personnel, Jessica Mendoza, who also somehow works for ESPN, although I can't see how they got through that conflict of interest, has blamed the entire Astros cheating scandal on the whistleblower. And she said that Mike Fears should be made to pay the price for his bringing forward the cheating scandal, which has now cost 4 men their jobs and has damaged the Astros. Will probably hit the Boston Red Sox, and the Mets lost Carlos Beltran. So you can begin to see the bigger problem baseball has, which is that not only do they condone cheating, but they criticize those who bring it forward. So this is from a woman whose team had to fire Carlos Beltran. Next up, from Reuters, ENI skates on its trial for bribery and corruption in Algeria. In a ruling Wednesday, the court acquitted a series of other defendants, including former ENI chief executive and the former SIPIM CEO, for bribery and corruption in Algeria. ENI is still under scrutiny for its payments to Dan Etienne in Nigeria for a huge block of energy rights along with Shell. But certainly for ENI, this trial court ruling in Algeria removes one potential very big issue. And we end with the ongoing PG&E bankruptcy case and a story in Bloomberg. The federal court judge overseeing the bankruptcy has demanded that PG&E explain how it will keep a promise to pay fire victims $13.5 billion in the face of a FEMA, that's of course the Federal Emergency Management Agency, demand for a cut of that money. By pushing PG&E for more information, the bankruptcy judge is wading into a potential fight for cash between the government agencies, demanding compensation for their fire recovery efforts and the California residents who were damaged by the negligent acts of PG&E and allowing the fires to not only start but really destroy quite a bit of property. So PG&E, once again, is in an extraordinarily difficult position. It has been 1 year since these Chapter 11 cases were filed. There's a June 30 deadline for a settlement that the judge has said. If a settlement and a company's reorganization are in place, PG&E will not be eligible for a state insurance fund, which would help them with some of the losses. So PG&E continues to stumble, and we will continue to see what they will come up with going forward. Thanks so much for listening to today's edition of the Daily Compliance News. I hope you have a very safe and happy weekend and that your team may win. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks again for listening and joining us tomorrow.